Hello everyone and welcome back to WhoCulture. We are your hosts, Seán and Ellie, and we are joined by the man who quite literally murdered the Enterprise F in Star Trek Picard. It's the wonderful Christopher Monfette. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. This is really fun. I always like doing these.
We're so delighted to have you here because if people are on WhoCulture going like, why did he introduce him as the man who introduced him? It's because we did a lovely podcast before where it was I think it was billed as a Trek podcast and it was like 95% Doctor Who. It was fantastic.
It was fantastic, except for the fact that I embarrassed myself terribly by failing your quiz completely, as if I'd never seen an episode of Doctor Who ever.
That's fine. The reason I say that's fine is because never ever worry about that. I failed a Trek quiz a while back, and I need other people to share my shame. So, okay. Yeah.
We can live in that together. It's fine.
Excellent. Cool. So, first of all, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you jumping on and joining us. So, full disclosure to everyone who is watching this right now, we are not recording this on the day that you are watching this. So we've done a little bit of a timey-wimey thing here. So in case we cover something in this video that has maybe been debunked or, you know, something like that. So just in case. But like if we jump straight, so we're going to go through the three, well, what we know / don't know about the 3 episodes. So the Star Beast. So it's slated to air 25th November, which is 2 days after Thanksgiving for our friends west of the Atlantic. And funnily enough, I will be in America. So happy Thanksgiving, everyone. So one of our theories is we feel that might have affected the fact that there was that's why it's happening, because it makes sense to be on a Saturday anyway. And obviously, I think the 23rd falls on the Thursday. Discuss.
The air dates were a weird one, weren't they? Because we kind of all felt like we knew when they were going to be and assumed that the 25th would be when the final episode aired, as opposed to when the first one aired. Because really then it means only one of those episodes is in the anniversary month, which was kind of what confused everyone a little bit. But yeah, I think maybe you're right. It's something to do with Thanksgiving.
It does give you a clear runway toward Thanksgiving, then at least. I mean, toward Christmas, right? Because then, you know, you've got something basically every week leading into the Christmas episode. So it'll feel like it kind of all flows together rather than airing 3 in November and then making you wait a month or something. So I kind of appreciate the strategy, because it feels like you're just going to get like one sort of 4-part experience before next year. So
I think so. I think it definitely, I was a bit like, oh, okay, that's the dates. But then very similar. It's like, right, okay, that means less of a gap before quote unquote Shooty's first episode, which we'll discuss now momentarily. But it then feels less of a gap, which is great because this is Doctor Who. It's going to have cliffhangers. It's just like, and not only that, but it's Russell T Davies, Doctor Who. If you thought you'd had cliffhangers in the last 10 years or whatever. So that's going to be, I'm excited for that. And, I'll stop making the joke in a second, but at least I'll be able to actually help do the ups and downs and stuff when it gets to December, because I'll be back around green screens and everything.
It also makes sense to me because like you can't tease out Chudi's entrance multiple times. I mean, it's sort of public knowledge that he's the next sort of proper like mainstay Doctor. And so we've seen so many trailers and even shots of him that it feels like you can't like build up to these specials, do these specials, and then say, now we're going to take a break and build up to Chudi again. So I like that they kind of all roll into each other as sort of one complete story. I think that's probably a great way to do it.
But what is interesting about that, though, just the way you said that, because I think a lot of people assumed that these 3 specials were going to be, it was going to be a 3-part story, right, that you'd need to watch all 3 of them, and it was one long story spread across 3 weeks. But actually now I think we're coming to realize that actually they're more standalone than we maybe realize, with maybe a little bit of a through line. I think from what we saw, I think in SFX magazine, the Star Beast is kind of a story in itself, which I think a lot of people didn't expect.
Yeah.
Which is quite interesting. And I think it's perhaps going to be more like the Doctor Who, the Russell T Davies Doctor Who that we've grown up watching, or I've grown up watching at least, before it then moves into something a little bit more wacky and wild.
I feel like Russell and Steven were both in different ways very good at telling these kinds of stories, and we tried to adopt it on Trek as well, which is, how do you tell a serialized meta story while making it feel like you've gotten episodic journeys, you know? And I think Doctor Who's always been able to really excel at that. So I'm sure that each episode will have its own personality, if not its own like narrative and its own story, but will kind of continue one sort of, whether it's a Toymaker story or whatever, that sort of weaves in between and connects all of them, so that they'll each feel like they have their identity, and you don't just feel like you're like trudging to the next part of a 3-part story every time. So I'm really excited to find out how this all weaves together.
There's also we have precedent in the 2009 specials. You know, we have Next Doctor, Planet of the Dead, Waters of Mars, which still gives me the creeps to this day.
That's a brilliant episode.
Yeah. So which are all lead toward David Tennant's first, second, 12th finale. But you know, and yet they are all still standalone. The only difference here being these are being released closer together. You know, there's been a theory doing the rounds. Funny enough, I hadn't seen this theory that Ncuti is going to appear as another character altogether earlier on in one of the specials. Like we have a unit soldier here as a cliffhanger. You know, takes off his helmet. It's Ncuti, but a character altogether, and that the Doctor then adopts this character's face going forward, and again with the precedent being Caecilius and 12. It would be a really clever way of having both Ncuti and David Tennant in the episodes together, not necessarily play but then I realize I'm monologuing here, but then I'm kind of like, is that a tribute or identity theft?
Personally, I'm not so sure if I like the idea of that or not. I think it's clever, but I think, as you've said, it's kind of been done with 12 and Caecilius, and quite recently. But also, there's been so much teasing of Ncuti's involvement that I feel like it's got to be more complicated than that. I feel like there's something deeper happening here that we're never going to guess.
I feel like there has to be, because I think to the second part of what you said, I would be genuinely surprised if it was just a straightforward regeneration. Like, you know, if it's just get to the end of the third one, Tennant regenerates into Ncuti and we're moving on. Like, I genuinely feel like at some point, whether it's in the second or third or whatever, Ncuti will enter the story in an interesting way. And you may get some overlap and watch those two characters play. It would seem like a terribly wasted opportunity if not. But I don't think it's as simple as like, I'm going to borrow an extra's face, because we've explored that story literally. It's interesting because there's a 3-year gap, there's a 3-season gap in my memory, you know, between, so it feels like Capaldi for me was like yesterday. So that feels like a very recent storyline.
It also feels a little bit like, I mean, the reason that they clearly added that part for Peter Capaldi is, how do we get around the fact that fans are pointing out that this actor has been in Doctor Who before, and it was very much put in there on purpose to address that because fans pick up on everything. I just feel as though if you're going to do that here, it's cheating. It's not quite not quite right.
And I'm not even sure that worked the first time. I liked that they tried it. I thought it was great, but they make such a, when they introduce Capaldi and it's like, who frowned me this face, right? Like, they hang a lantern on, this is a thing, and he recognizes it. It's a mystery, and we're going to explain it. And then they just kind of explain it in that one, is it the Ashilda episode? You know, where he's like, oh yeah, I guess I kind of just picked a random guy to remind me that I need to help people.
They could have just left it.
Yeah, it didn't feel like enough of a payoff for the mystery they were setting up.
I still think I want maybe after Ncuti, a couple after Ncuti, bring back Colin Baker, then do it. Then be like, why was that one spear carrier in that one serial back in the... Why was he so important?
I was just about to say that. Like, they've done it before and they didn't address it. And everyone just kind of got over it. Right. And the more you shed a light on it, the more it kind of becomes an issue that isn't an issue.
Yeah. That's it. I love the idea of there being a reason, because going back as far as Romana, she said, I chose to appear as this, I believe it was a princess, I'm misremembering, but there was this thing about Romana 2 chose her appearance. So the precedent, it's there, it's all the way back, which is fine. And I do love the idea that maybe we'll revisit that again in the future. I think this is too soon. And it feels like a massive story in itself. And if you've only got 3 specials and then the Christmas special, you know, it feels like, oh, hang on, how much lore can we cram into three hours? What was I going to
I think as long as it's something that's either mythologically satisfying or emotionally satisfying, it's going to be great. I mean, whether it's something as simple as, you know, bad version, I've got to pour all of my regeneration energy into Donna to make sure that she can survive now in this sort of post-memory thing, and I've got to give up a life, essentially, and move on to the next one. And it's satisfying in an emotional way, great. If it turns out to be the Toymaker did a timey-wimey thing and looped me back on myself or whatever, also great. But, you know, it just, as long as it's one of the two, I think, you know, fans are going to be really satisfied.
I very much like the idea of it doing, because, I mean, as soon as Donna was announced, the theories are like, so, she dying or what?
Right.
You know, so it's like, talk about something that needs to be addressed. It's so, you know, when her head explodes, does it go to the left? Does it go to the right? You know, I would like to see neither.
Wouldn't it be a total bummer if they brought her back and then just killed her? Like that would be the worst. Like, you know, that's like the one thing they can't do. So I can't imagine the challenge that Russell had in writing these, trying to figure out, well, I've got to bring her back. But the minute you bring her back, you kind of promise you're not going to kill her, because it would be the cruelest, most awful thing to do. So
Russell T has precedent. You know, he's mean.
But I feel like that would be particularly, give us a little gift, and then I'm gonna murder it. We'll see.
I do wonder, perhaps something to do, Don. Obviously, the whole brain exploding thing has to be addressed, but it just kind of dawned on me that Donna may well be in a very different situation now as to what she was when we saw her in series 4. So, you know, we know that she has a daughter in Rose, and she's married. We saw her get married at the end of time, part 2. But when we first met her, and when she initially was traveling with the Doctor, she didn't feel like she was worth anything. She didn't think she was anything special. She had nothing to be around for, and she wanted to go on these adventures. And I wonder if now that she has that family and that stability, if it will be a case of her not actually wanting this life anymore. Mm-hmm. And which might be an interesting way of exploring it, because we know there's been a lot of questions as to how much involvement there will be with Seán and Rose in these episodes, and whether that will be an integral part in her making the choice or lack of choice. Maybe.
I think it's got, it has to be about that sense of, you know, I feel like I've been missing something, but I don't know what, right? That there's like an empty piece in me. And that's why I always thought that the 12th Doctor's sort of parting of the ways with Clara was like an interesting karmic payback for what happened with Donna, that he was now the recipient of this thing where I have to lose this piece of myself and lock it away that's so dear and important to me. So I'll be very curious to see where we find Donna, because what was interesting and what always felt really tragic and painful about that ending for her is not just like the adventures she went on, how awesome they were, and all those memories. It was her character growth over them, about how she like learned and grew and saw more and became more open-minded, became more like emotionally accessible. And when that went away, when those memories went away, did that go away as well? So, you know, is she even remotely the same Donna that we left? You know what I mean? Like what comes back when those memories come back? I think it's such a fascinating question to ask.
I think, because I think there might be, I won't call it a long game tease, because I presume they didn't know back at the end of time. But if you think about the Donna we see at the end of time, is, you know, she is that kind of the brassy, don't you touch that car, and she's got a teasing Sylvia shouting after Wilf and the Doctor going away in the TARDIS. Right. It's like, are you talking to the sky? Yeah, and it kind of it feels like very Gen 1 Donna.
Yeah,
but But also then you see when Donna, when she starts to remember when she shouldn't be remembering, there is just moments of like, hang on. And I don't think Catherine Tate gets nearly enough credit for that, because it kind of feels almost like an extended cameo sometimes as well in those episodes. But like the seed of something that grows and grows and grows, and then you have like everyone else knows, so that you could even have this play of the fact of like, right, Seán knows, Wilf knows, Sylvia knows. I'm just going to assume Rose has found out, by the time we meet her. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but otherwise you have to do the whole thing of, right, is Rose going to freak out about the fact that you've got Meep running, or Beep, sorry, Beep, right. Meep, it's all the thing, running around going like, or do you just like, I'm aware aliens exist, let's move on with the story, right? I
feel like there's going to be a lot of family comedy with that in that first episode of just trying to hide the ball from Donna as the world collapses around you. I mean, I think that there's like limitless amounts of potential for just mining laughs from that. So
the other question that we've got about these specials is, how involved is Neil Patrick Harris going to be within the first 2 episodes? I think everyone initially assumed that he was actually going to be involved in all 3 of the episodes, but now that the posters have been released and he's only present on the one for the Giggle, now everyone's a little bit unsure as to his involvement in the other 2 stories. Like, Seán had a good theory about his involvement the other week, about him kind of shall I remind you on your theory? Yeah. But that he might not be present in the first 2 episodes, but he may be kind of a lingering voice, or there is a presence, but he's not the central focus, and that kind of comes out in the final episode.
More of a well, there's the literal scene of him marionette in the trailer, and that I feel like it's quite deliberate, that yes, it will be one of those kind of, it was Blofeld all along, but as an audience we sort of know that going in as well, which itself presents a challenge. Is how do you make your challenge of the week actually challenging if we as an audience know, well, actually we all we need to do is get to, I suppose that's like any series, really. I mean, Harold Saxon would be maybe the best, or one of the best examples of that.
There's a reverse psychology to that, right? Like, because you look at the marketing and for example, that they've been very open and honest, not from the start, but recently, about who he's playing. This is who he is. He's in the specials. And so in some ways, the Harold Saxon ball was hidden. That was a well-kept secret, right? Like when they turned that card at the end of that season, your jaw was on the floor. I can't believe they did this. They pulled it off. And with this, it's like, I can imagine that the temptation to just we do the Beep the Meep story, we do whatever episode 2 is. There's a little mysterious thing in 1, there's a little mysterious thing in 2, and the payoff in 3 is that it was, the Toymaker was Neil Patrick Harris. But the fact that they're being so open and honest about the fact that he's in it suggests to me that the opposite might be true, that he may make his presence known very quickly and it's not a big secret we're building up to. I mean, it could also totally be the other way as well. But I imagine that's always the struggle when you do something this big, is like, can you keep this secret? And if you can't, then you just have to bake it into your storytelling. That like people are going to know.
Hide in plain sight nearly, because if again, this is a franchise that delights in misdirection. It's one of the most fun things about it. Like, I guarantee we'll probably end up doing ups and downs or a discussion video after the first one. Be like, we've got it. We know where it's going. We know it's going that. What do you mean John Pertwee's in the next episode? How is John Pertwee in the next? Something like that. But yeah, like whether it's, say, actually, I keep going back to End of Time, but you had Timothy Dalton doing his his voiceover for that first part, and that gut punch at the end of part 1. I remember watching it with my dad, and he just kind of went, the Time Lords, and I was kind of like, I am too emotionally fragile for this right now. So I think there is going to be, to agree with you, there will be much more of a presence, whether he's physically there or not, because we've seen those scenes of panic in the streets, and what appears to be kind of flashes of the Toymaker. Is that what we're going to get? Is it literally blink and you'll miss him, but he's there episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, and it's the Doctor's either growing realization or something is wrong with the universe around us?
Yeah, but if you're in charge of the creative of that franchise, what you don't ever want the audience to be is farther ahead of the story than the Doctor. And right now, the audience is fairly far ahead of that story. We think we know who the ultimate villain of these three specials are, but simply the fact that we know that suggests to me that there has to be something much more surprising, or that there's going to be something structurally really interesting that there's got to be a card turn somewhere where we're outsmarted. I have to believe that's what they're building toward.
I mean, I think the one that I'm most intrigued by, because of the lack of foresight and foreknowledge that we as an audience have, is episode 2, Wild Blue Yonder. Because as much as it is lovely to have all of the kind of these trailer clips and to start building up a scenario of what we think is going to happen, there is something also really like intriguing about knowing nothing going in. And Wild Blue Yonder is the episode that we know pretty much nothing about.
Yeah. My feeling about that one, knowing literally zero about it, like, because you have a pretty good sense of what stuff will appear in Star Beast. Like, feels like the beat is the setup and it launches you into the larger story. I want to believe or that a lot of that Toymaker chaos we see is maybe in the third special at the climax of the story, but again, who knows? It could all be jigsawed around. But yeah, the biggest blank spot is that second episode, but it feels like, just looking at it from a writing perspective, the character math would suggest that one probably needs to be an intimate, like, Dr. Donna adventure, because it feels like you're going to have all the business of introducing Donna, awakening Donna, wanting to tell whatever that Beep the Meep story is. And then if you're off into a second adventure, you're going to need to build in time for the Doctor and Donna to catch up, to emotionally reconnect. And so I 2 is the one that I'm most fascinated by, because it feels like it's going to need to be an adventure that's structured in a way that really puts them together. But we'll see. I could be totally wrong.
What I think as well is I think it could be an awesome opportunity to, obviously naturally discuss what the Doctor's experienced since leaving Donna. I mean, it's something, because it's been 14 years or something since End of Time, and obviously a year before that. But actually in universe, it's been thousands of years. I mean, right. How long was Matt Smith on Transalore? How long was Capaldi? I mean, he had that one night with River on Beryllium. That's 25 years right there,
Do
you count the billions of days that he was in the prison?
I'm going to say yes. So he's looking well for his age.
He's emotionally a billion years old now.
Yeah,
so
and how does the 14th Doctor then, is there a bit of like, how do I phrase it? Almost a pat on the head of like, oh, you're so far behind me. Now, you kind of can't imagine that scene on the one hand, but also it being the kind of the maybe more rapid pace, everything's exploding around us. I don't really have time to, and Donna being the very character to, she's the one who can stop him. That's her runaway bride. You need someone to stop you. And I think that could be an excellent interplay, because unfortunately, not unfortunately, but you have the question of, great as it is to see David Tennant and Catherine Tate back together, there has to be a point. There has to be a reason. The
theme of fate is mentioned several times throughout the trailer. And so the intentionality of how they come together in a way that can't be chance has to be meaningful. So, and I also think, we shouldn't, the one thing that Russell seems like he's being, at least in the press, is very respectful to what Chibnall was handing off to him. So on the one hand, that might just be very gentlemanly and like, yeah, of course we're not going to forget any of that, and then he goes off and he does his own thing, or he very well may be on, like, even just the Tales of the TARDIS honors the idea of the support group at the end of Chibnall's episode. So there is a consideration of what came before, and what came before was the Master screwing with the Doctor's regeneration process. So who knows if even some of that might be a cause or explanation or something that gets factored into this episode. It's hard to say, but I think anything is on the table at this point.
I think another thing that's kind of been floated around with this episode is that if we are going to see any sort of hints back to the Doctor's past in any cameo form or any sort of flashback form or anything like that, then it would be in this episode, which seems to be more of a deep, almost interrogation of these two characters, but particularly of the Doctor. So my thinking is, obviously, Seán, you were saying about Susan. If there is going to be the return of characters like that, then perhaps Susan would be someone who appears in this episode, whether it's a kind of, hey, look at where she is now. She can't see you, but you can take a look into this pensive if you want and see what she's up to now, and almost a little bit like his kind of farewell tour where he observes all of the people that he's kind of affected throughout his life. And there is also a mention in the trailer, isn't there? Donna says, did she say she mentioned Gallifrey? Is that the wording she used? Something like that.
There is line from this teaser trailer earlier this year. She mentioned Gallifrey. Yeah.
And so there's been a bit of speculation that the she is Susan. This is the thing about this episode. We just don't know.
Yeah.
These specials, as well as the 50th, have the impossible task of having to honor the past of something while ushering it into its future. And I think the Tales of the TARDIS is a lovely way to do that in a very ancillary, if you never saw them, these specials are fine, but there is a degree to which you do have to bake that into the story you're properly telling. And so I wouldn't be surprised if there is some nostalgic tendril to past seasons further past. But the thing I was thinking about the other day that really I thought was interesting is the degree to which Donna returning is in many ways a metaphor for Russell returning, right? It's that sense of he left with her character and he comes back with her character, and there is a gap, right, in between where Donna isn't cognizant of, she's stepping back into something and re-remembering it and getting the feel for it again. And much like Russell he's coming back to that story. And I think I have to imagine that there's an intentional emotional reason for Russell to tell the story this way. So,
on the one hand, to apologize to poor Donna. Yeah. I was going to travel with you forever. Nope.
Bye-bye.
But no, I think there is a beautiful thematic, because it does feel like, and this is with the greatest of respect to Stephen Moffat's era and Chris Chibnall's era, it does feel like a return to, the first section of the revival of Doctor Who, and they all have very significant styles and, very easy to see, right, what comes from when. And I think, I still think the best description I ever heard of RTD's series was just it's Doctor Who, but it's also Crash Bang Wallop. The
thing I love about that era of Who is that it's incredibly romantic. It's incredibly emotional and passionate and very twee and very fun, and that's all great. But the thing I've always loved about Russell is he's not afraid to allow the Doctor to lose something. In a way that Moffat could never quite stomach. I mean, Moffat would let the Doctor lose something only to come up with a brilliant timey-wimey way for him to rescue it 2 or 3 episodes later. He couldn't stomach real loss. And in a way that I think Russell understands that real genuine loss is the engine that drives the Doctor forward, and the fear of that and wanting never to, and that sense of, for me to help the many, I have to gather friends who, some of which I will lose along the way, and there'll be a cost to doing that, and that's what drives him emotionally forward. So I'm very glad that we're getting a showrunner back to the show who's going to put, I think, the Doctor in some positions where, we will get gut punched and things will happen that we don't expect, and we can't just count on the cliffhanger sort of serial of okay, well, great, how is he going to save Clara now? How is he going to go back and answer the question of the last episode? Because sometimes there just aren't answers.
I feel like then it's kind of, there's some irony in the fact then that knowing that the third special, the Giggle, is going to be where we say goodbye to Donna once again in whatever form that is, and the 14th Doctor, and by extension David Tennant, we've got to say goodbye to those characters again. Then there is some irony in the fact that the episode is titled The Giggle, and from what we can gather is going to be quite a showman fun sort of episode in the elements we've seen of Neil Patrick Harris, and it kind of feels like there's going to be a cruel twist to this episode that is going to gut punch us.
You know what? I'm not as sure, based on our conversation today, I'm not as sure that we're going to get the tragic ending to the Giggle. I think there will be an ending. I think you're absolutely right. We will say goodbye to Donna at some point as well. I mean, much as we haven't discussed it, we will have to say goodbye to Wilf. And there will be that. But there will have to be a regeneration at some point. Otherwise, like, kind of like, shoot, he was supposed to be here a while ago. Where is he? But I think it could be a more cathartic ending. Because the theme, or the theory, that was going around a while ago, is that the entire existence of the 14th Doctor is also to do with the Toymaker's done something. Yeah. Because that last teaser, now this is pure speculation, theory land. People are saying that, okay, that shot of Shooty there at the very end, he's in his costume that we've seen him in from filming. And also, it looks quite like that shot that Jodie finished up in at the end of that, kind of, is this all in the blink of an eye? Was any of it real?
It was all a dream.
Which, right at the right way, I can forgive all a dream. But best of luck to someone writing it the right way. It's not an easy thing to do.
I think the thing to think about as well, in a way that I mean, Doctor Who has had in the past, but I think is about, and again, pure speculation, I think is about to have again. I don't think you go through the process of linking up with Disney and creating this beautiful Marvels-esque intro for your franchise if your plan isn't to expand it beyond the mothership, And so I would be shocked if in however many years' time that there isn't a proper Unit spinoff, a proper Torchwood spinoff. And so I think the idea of what it means to say goodbye to characters in the Doctor Who series itself may start to become different, because I think they can be handed off to other shows. So, I'm not saying that, I think there's going to be a Unit show starring Donna Noble, but, in the way that like Sarah Jane popped up in other ways, I think we'll have a kind of a coming generation of stories where these characters, who might not travel with the Doctor anymore, do continue to have adventures and lives and pop up in other series and don't just have to sort of be forgotten to past stories.
I'd be very, very much happy to watch that, because I was a late convert to the Sarah Jane adventures. So, I mean, now I love them, and they're fun, and they're great.
That was my childhood.
Stop saying that, Ellie. I feel so old when you say that.
I remember watching that at my grandma's house, like during the summer holidays and things, and it would always be on because she very often, I don't understand quite the logic behind this, but it would be, you can't put the TV on, but you can watch a film. I don't know why that makes any difference, but if the Sarah Jane Adventures were on, it was like, but we have to watch the Sarah Jane Adventures. I know it's not a film, but I'll turn it off right after, but I have to watch the Sarah Jane Adventures.
Did she let you watch it?
Most of the time, yeah. The other thing that has been pointed out as well, particularly in the Giggle, is all the Unit soldiers and members, and Kate in particular, seem to be wearing some sort of device around their arm, which, I mean, to me indicates maybe it stops whatever the Toymaker has done. I mean, we see that the human race has kind of gone into chaos. So I'm wondering if that's some sort of device that they've created to make themselves immune from the effects of whatever's happening. That feels very Star Trek to me.
It also feels very Batman. I mean, the Giggle, the Joker, this idea of spreading it across. Because again, jumping off that as well, there was the picture that's been released very, very recently, which sort of, it's like it confirms that John Logie Baird is going to play some sort of role in this story, because there's a lot of visual clues about, the very earliest days of television. And hang on, what is I have to get the correct wording of this. A nip cow disc. Right, there we go. Nip cow disc, everyone. But there's one of them in this picture. And that, well, I think we said this one before, is that there's an image on the screens in unit. And was that not one of the first things that was ever broadcast?
The creepy face thing.
Creepy face thing, which is actually, I mean, a lovely puppet that we're sharing with everyone that's burned into people's souls. You know, is this being used as a way of spreading whatever signal, the Giggle, that we assume the Toymaster... Toymaster is a shop that's gone out of business, Seán. The Toymaker. I've done that so many times.
I'm wondering if this isn't a kind of, not narrative, but maybe slightly spiritual successor to why am I totally forgetting the species name? The Tennant's first appearance. Not
Stickerax?
Yeah, the Stickerax. Like that there was a quality of that, right, which is we have command over the people of Earth and are driving them to behave and act and collide and conflict in ways and kill themselves and all that stuff. And it's a sort of a spell, right? And we've seen that in other points in Doctor Who. But, you know, there is something interesting about the idea of the Toymaker having influence over the common population, and maybe that device is something that makes you immune to the effects of the Giggle or whatever.
I mean, there's also the question as well as to, it seems that the Doctor and Donna don't seem to be affected by it either. And the question of why aren't they affected? In which case, are they the target for what's going on? Is it all a show for the Doctor? Which it feels very much like it is. It feels like the Toymaker is controlling all of the people and making all these things happen to get the Doctor's attention or to do something to affect the Doctor.
Yeah, there's clearly a theme of puppet mastery and chess playing. And so you have to imagine that everything that happens in the course of this 3-part story is intentional to lead the Doctor down a specific path. Yeah.
I mean, quite often, most of the time, the Doctor stumbles across a situation and then involves themselves to try and save the day. Whereas this very much feels like they are the intended target of it. And it's let's use everything at our disposal to hurt you, to get to you. Let's use the human race who you love so much, and let's make all these terrible things happen and remind you of all these awful things because I want to get at you. And I don't care who I use or what I do to do that. That's what it feels like to me.
You know, there's also the bigger question that I think is like, it's baked in, but I think it's worth asking. And this is all sort of like fruitless, but fun to ask, right? Like, but like, why the whole mystery of the Doctor regenerating back into Tennant, right? Like, you have to ask yourself, is that a choice, right? That he's on subconscious level making? Is it about some emotional thing that the Doctor needs, or is it the effect of something? You know, is it the something that the Toymaker has done, right, that is forcing this regeneration? Or, you know, is it a consequence or a decision?
But jumping off that theory, is it, you know, do we get, because remember, the Dr. Donna is very much a thing. Is it somehow manipulating the Dr. Donna that it manipulates the Doctor going forward to kind of bring them back together again? Of course, now my theory brain is like, you know, is David Tennant and Rose Tyler in the other dimension going like, you know, kind of like, well, hang on, he's regenerated no, he can't regenerate, can he? All right, so he's just gonna wake up being like, that's a weird morning anyway, tea. But because I don't think, because again, it ties into why specifically these characters today. There's also something I wanted to just really quickly mention. It's going back slightly to the Wild Blue Yonder, and it's something that the director Tom Kingsley said earlier on this year. And as a big, massive sci-fi nerd, this is really exciting. It's got lots of similarities to two of my favorite films, Aliens and The Thing. It's got a little bit of DNA with those mixed in with Doctor Who. Now, Aliens, one of the best flipping sequels of all time. The Thing, you want paranoia? Watch The Thing. Because you've got Shapeshifter. It's, you know, are they alone on this ship? almost definitely not.
I think that's going to play into that episode. That episode to me feels like it's going to be quite a claustrophobic situation. You know, whatever has got them, the TARDIS has left them. They have no means of escaping, and they're really forced to address whatever it is that's caught them. And I think that kind of fits in with that kind of idea of being isolated and not being quite sure what it is that's surrounding you or what's coming from what corner.
It's interesting. You know, he says the thing, right? Because yes, paranoia thriller, but also that becomes an exploration of identity, right? Like, you know, in an episode where anybody can wear the face of anybody else, it's not just who do I trust, but it's who am I? You know, and those are all questions I think that'll be sort of a part of this notion of why have I regenerated back into this old form? You know, what is the significance of that? Who am I in this form, but 2 lifetimes, 3 lifetimes later? You know, so it's a great thematic way to sort of get those characters who haven't seen each other, who have all these questions about why they're back in each other's lives. The Doctor who has questions about literally who he is, in the context of a shapeshifty or sort of body snatchy story. There's something potentially really cool there.
I think what we need to get is we need a recreation of Paul McGann's regeneration, where he's just sitting there covered in a thing going, who am I? And if we get that, then it's perfect. It's absolutely, you get forgiven for however many sins at all. That has to be in it.
I'm fascinated to know whether that regeneration into Tennant is a natural choice or whether someone has sort of manipulated the process of regeneration to create that outcome. Or, like you said, great thing, if the Dr. Donna connection still exists and Donna out there in the universe finds herself in some way mortally in danger, or her daughter mortally in danger, and kind of sends out like an SOS she didn't even know she had in her, and that's what triggered the Doctor to become Tennant because she needed the face of a friend to come help her. Like, that's also a great way to do it. It's just fun to speculate, and I'm sure we're all wrong. And
yeah, there's that too. This is going to be a great video for speculation. That so much of the extended Doctor Who universe of novels and comics are just like, this is gold. This is great. This is all right, brilliant. We're doing this. Quickly, get the book. Everyone copyright whatever we can.
Yeah, I was just about to say, make sure you write all these ideas down, because if this isn't what's happening, you need to go, Russell, I've got some plans.
Chris, if you never see this video release, it's because we got real paranoid. It's like, no, we need to keep this. We need to keep this.
Either that, or you were absolutely right, and Russell came knocking at our door saying, you can't put that out.
Unit crashes through the window behind Seán. Yeah.
I suppose the last question that everyone's got then really is how we're going to move on from the Giggle into Ncuti Gatwa and from beyond there. I mean, I know that there's been a bit of speculation as to, obviously we now know, probably initially to do with the fact that Disney are moving forward after with this, that the following seasons will be labelled season 1, as opposed to what we expected it would be series 14 and a continuation. I've seen some speculation that there's going to be almost a split Doctor, which maybe supports the idea that this element of the Dr. Donna has to sacrifice themselves in some way to save Donna, potentially, and therefore kind of this part of the Doctor ends and we then move on to almost a new side of the Doctor with Ncuti Gatwa. I mean, that sounds quite confusing, but I wouldn't put it past them.
Right. It's interesting because I think if I'm right, like, I think Russell and folks involved with the show have referred to Tennant as 14 and Ncuti as 15, like as canonically sequenced, which implies that there's not some sort of reboot of who the Doctor is, that it is just the next chapter. And so, you know, I would imagine that there's some, maybe at best, like universal shift at the end of the Giggle, right? That kind of like kind of says we're entering a new era of stakes, of threats, of something, that we're starting a new story that will allow them to sort of feel justified in calling it season 1 of something new. But I don't think Russell, it doesn't seem to me like his wish is to change too much, you know.
Yeah, and I'm glad about that. I mean, even though I just suggested this whole theory, that's not really the direction I'd like the show to go in. I mean, when I was one of those people that was like, season 1? No, it's series 14. What are you doing? I mean, I understand why they've had to do that in terms of where it's being distributed from and the wider audience. But I agree that I very much feel like, in terms of what we know from what's coming in the new season 1, it's very much still connected to everything that came before. So I don't think it's going to be too much of a separation. I mean, they tried to do that with Jodie Whittaker. They tried to go, you could start watching Doctor Who here and it would absolutely make sense. We're not going to bring any of any aliens back. Right. And for that entire first series of Jodie's, there was nothing from the old in there to try and reestablish it as something new. I mean, they quickly realized that didn't work, and then they brought Captain Jack back and the likes, but yeah, I think it's proven that doesn't really work.
I mean, I think it's Matt Smith and Amy, I mean, I think was a great reset. Like, you could start there and not really have known much about what came before, and it really works. Like, I think that's the last time it has really worked. And then eventually I think you just owe old characters and stories, because you know you're bringing, you know, an entire generation of fans with you. But I think there's also a cognizance here of, like, how to say this politely, the Russell era moved in seamlessly into the Moffat era, and while they were two very different storytelling approaches, they dovetailed really nicely and they told a cohesive story, and it felt like Doctor Who through and through. And Chibnall's era feels like something else. Not only was it a hard restart, it was kind of a thematic, tonal, balancing kind of overhaul that worked for some and not for others. And so I think, you know, Russell has every right to kind of say, like, we're going back to a kind of Matt Smith reboot. You can restart. We're going to call it season 1 because we've got a new home for it. It makes total sense to me.
And also, I suppose, in fact, he's done it before. Season 1, 2005.
Series 1.
Series, thank you very much. Series 1, 2005. People will have, you know, there will be people from, you know, who are die-hard Sylvester McCoy and Colin Baker fans who will be like, that's not series 1. That's series. I have no idea what canonically that series would have been.
That would have been a season. This is the thing. Classic Who was seasons. Then with the 2005 revival, it went to series 1. And I think perhaps the shift now to season 1 again, I mean, season is more of an American term, whereas in the UK, you would call it a series. And I think, again, that falls into the kind of the Disney thing and the expanding to a wider audience and appealing to a wider audience as well.
I think it's a linguistic shift to a more global platform. It feels like the intention here really is to, like, build out the world into a proper Marvel-esque sort of continuity. I could be wrong about that, but, like, that new logo seems to imply, right? Like, it's very much the DC, Marvel, Disney kind of, like, this is all connected, one big metaverse of stories. So it would be surprising if they don't do that.
Well, whatever it's going to be, I'm bloody excited. I can't wait to get together to have another video where it's actually just us watching this video going wrong, 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 wrong. You know,
yeah, it'll be us hanging our heads in shame, going, "Oh, he fooled us all. That was brilliant."
Nice.
You know, or not. I don't know. I that's the thing. Like, you know, being a writer and working on Trek, it's like so much stuff gets spoiled for you in this industry, where you hear other writers or other producers or whatever kind of, oh, did you hear how this season's going to end, or what they're working on over here? And so very little is genuinely surprising to me. You know, I know quite a bit about certain things, and it's great to have a complete, like, the thing that I love the most, I know the least about, and I can just go into this as a fan. You know, and I have the great pleasure and honor of being friends with Rachel Talalay, who directed the first of the 3, and she won't tell me So, you know, she's a loyal soldier and tight-lipped and won't tell me anything. And what's great is my friendship with her is because she's a wonderful human being and an amazing creative talent and an amazing director, and it's pure and it's not tainted by some sort of transactional, like, ooh, what secrets can you tell me? And that's the same thing about this new series. It's just fun for me to be able to sit here with fellow geeks that I like and admire and nerd out and know that I'm just wrong. We're not right about any of this. And it's going to be a genuine surprise to see it when it airs. So I'm just excited to fan out again. I think for a lot of the Who fandom, this feels like a coming home, and I feel like we're all excited. We all feel like we're just about to like jump into a warm, cozy blanket. But I think the thing we all have to remind ourselves is that, you know, Russell and the crew behind the show, the production team, whatever, they're too smart to give us the same thing. You know, like we think we're going in for a warm hug and we might get sucker punched. We don't know, and I think that's really surprising and interesting and suspenseful for me.
I think like one of the best examples of that is like, oh my God, the Stolen Earth. Finally, you know, Rose and the Doctor, and what the hell is that Dalek doing?
Right, yeah. Exactly.
But I think, right, to be fair, we could continue discussing for hours and hours, but I just want to say thank you so much for your time. As always, you are a very, very welcome face on this channel.
This is always super fun, and we got to do this again closer to or after some of these things come out.
Once we actually know.
We'll just do a reaction video of the three of us screaming. How about that for an hour?
I'm telling you right now, I'm here for that. Just like, you know, kind of like as in 2 seconds into the episode, David Tennant regenerates into shooting. Like, ha ha, you didn't see that coming. It was all fake footage. None of the trailers were real.
I love it.
Folks, thank you so much. Keep things wibbly wobbly, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye. 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 Bye.